Welcome back to Secret Weapons, and today we're taking a look at the Model FET by Electronic Audio Experiments. We're here today taking a look at the Model FET by Electronic Audio Experiments. This is a dual parallel channel drive preamp based on the Sunn Model T, a short-lived and very legendary amplifier. And if it sounds like I know what I'm talking about, it's because I read the manual. In actuality, I have never played a Sunn Model T. I don't really know what bands kind of are known for using them. It's my understanding that it's kind of doomier music, but I don't have a lot of experience with those amplifiers or the driving motivation behind creating something like this. But here's what I can tell you. The Model FET sounds amazing and it sounds versatile, and there are a lot of really cool things that we are going to pull out of this phenomenal preamp today. Let's start by quickly talking through the kind of base level control configuration of this pedal and kind of what it's known for in terms of kind of its like stated use cases in the manual and in some of the ways that Electronic Audio Experiments has showcased this pedal. First off, this is a 2-channel preamp in a box. You have a bright channel and a normal channel. They're not in series, they are in parallel, which means they do not directly interact with each other, but instead kind of blend together to give you a kind of wealth of different tones. Your bright channel is going to be the channel that has more treble information, more refined and defined mid-range content, less low end. It's going to break up a lot more quickly and with a lot more articulation. The normal channel is flatter, wider, and more like wooden sounding. It's kind of the hard to find a term that sounds right term that I'm going to go with here. Typically, that's going to be used to kind of thicken up that bright channel in a lot of base level uses, but I actually have a couple of really cool uses for it by itself that I want to showcase as we get into our sound samples. But that's the kind of like long and short of your bright and normal channels. One has a lot more hair and a lot more grit earlier on. The other one is wider, flatter, but gets a kind of like thicker distortion tone as you crank it up, and they blend really well. You have a master volume on the side here, which can really drive. It gets really loud if you want it to. It's meant to be able to push a power amp and kind of be your actual analog preamp replacement if you wanted to use this in like a direct rig. It apparently also works really well with a cab sim as your kind of like driving amplifier, and I believe that. Down below you have a 3-band EQ that kind of interacts really strikingly across all 3 bands. They all do what you expect them to, but they actually have some quirkiness where there's some overlap between the mid-range and the treble, or as you pull the treble way back, you actually start to push a little bit of low end as well. There's some interesting things that can be done with that 3-band EQ, and we will explore some of that as well. But let's get into what I have found to be really compelling about this thing. And that is a couple of things. That bright channel has a really great character for kind of like angular, mid to high gain overdrive sounds, where you want a lot of articulation in like some jazz master pickups, and you can kind of fill that tone back out with that normal channel. Conversely, that normal channel is really useful for low gain ambience. Seriously, we'll showcase a little bit in the sound samples how good that normal channel sounds with something like the Microcom, to take something that sounds very sterile and digital and clean and kind of imbue it with a little bit more nuance and a little bit more of an organic tone. And lastly, and I think this is kind of the standout thing, and this is the thing that really spoke to me on the Model FET, is because this is like a proper amp stack in a pedal, and because it's a meticulous recreation of a like beloved amplifier, it works as an always-on incredibly well, and we'll really dig into that. And not just as an always-on by itself, but stacking drives has fallen out of favor with me in the last couple of years. If you watch my channel here or elsewhere, you'll know that I don't do a lot of gain staging in terms of like cascading overdrives or whatever. I tend to set my low gain, my mid gain, and my high gain, and then just switch between them for the tones that I want. But this bolsters other drives like you cannot believe. It is really cool, and we're going to take a long hard look at that in this video as well. The intro video, or the intro song of this video, heavily relies on stacking different configurations of the Limelight and the Model FET to create some absolutely massive sounds. And we're also going to take a look at how something like the 1981 Inventions DRV, that has a lot of articulation and presence, but lacks some low mids that kind of doesn't make it heavy enough in certain contexts, how you can run that into the normal channel on this and really just create the world's biggest rat. So if you're in the market for an always-on preamp, whether it's something you want to be low mid gain or something that just gets brutal and heavy, this is really worth your time. If you've played anything from Electronic Audio Experiments, you know what a good circuit designer John is and how high quality everything he puts out is. So let's go to the top-down camera. Let's run through how the Model FET might be your new best weapon in organic ambient tones and crushing high gain articulation. Okay, before we get into our sound samples, let's go ahead and talk through our signal chain. I am playing my Jennings Voyager with McNelly Stagger Swagger pickups into the 1981 Inventions DRV, the Electronic Audio Experiments Limelight V2, and the Electronic Audio Experiments Model FET. From there, we go to the Chase Bliss Thermae, the Hologram Microcom, the Strymon El Cap, and the Strymon Big Sky. Our amplifiers are the Universal Audio Dream and Ruby. And from there, we go to our DAW, which is Universal Audio's Luna. We're controlling the El Cap and the Big Sky with a Morningstar MC6 controller, which we'll basically just use to, for the most part, pull up different reverb algorithms really quickly. And we'll spend most of our time living on a small plate, but we'll occasionally venture into some more ambient stuff, as you'll hear shortly. The plate reverb on the Big Sky, the El Cap, and the Jennings sound like this. This is our dry tone. And of course, we will get pretty ambient at some point. Okay, let's dive in. We're going to separate the Model FET samples into a few different sections. We'll start things off by basically running through the configuration of knobs, exploring the two channels, how they interact with one another, and then that EQ section and how it interacts amongst itself. It's very reactive and very interesting to see the different tones you can pull out of it. From there, we will then focus in on kind of one of my favorite ambient sounds with the Model FET. Spoiler alert, it involves the normal channel. And then we will dial up what I can consider to be my close to always on, untouched sound, and make small tweaks to it as we explore stacking drives with the DRV and the Limelight. So let's start things off by looking at the bright channel. Both channels mute at 0, so dry tone. And then the Model FET's going to kill that until you start bringing in one of these channels. This bright one is going to be more articulate, more gain earlier, but also a thinner overall sound. We'll try to do our best to kind of pull that master down as we push channels up so that we're not getting a bunch of extra distortion at the amplifier level. Because right now I'm just trying to kind of interact more dramatically with the internal clipping of the Model FETs. And the reason for that is you can hear how articulate and how much it cleans up really quickly. So like, that's got some good hair to it, but I can jump to that middle position and immediately get to a texture and kind of like very felt grit in the way that this bright channel breaks up. And for good measure, let's go ahead and max it out. I find that bright channel really has a great sweet spot right around here, especially with just a little bit of mids pushed. So that's the bright channel. Let's jump over to that normal channel. Leveling everything back out as best we can. This normal channel is not going to feel like it breaks up as quickly. It's also not going to have nearly the articulation. I find that typically it's going to be the less beloved channel on this thing because of how much, you'll hear it, how much flatter it sounds. Let's bring that volume back up. This channel gets a lot harder to deal with middle position. As you can hear, like the low notes get really flabby really quickly if you're not careful. This is where it's worth paying attention to how beautifully these two channels interact, because you can get to this like, and that's like ferocious, but it lacks something that lets it stand out in a mix. And just a little bit of that bright channel brought back in. And that's where you start finding those sweet spots, is like, take that bright channel and you have that clarity and that texture, but not a lot in the middle, not a lot of weight to your tone. You start to roll that normal channel back in. And then I find that rolling off the bass and rolling up the mids just a bit will really give you something really powerful. You can even keep them both pretty quiet or pretty low gain and just get some better texture out of your bass tone. That way it's still nice and clean. texture that's otherwise missing. There's a lot of harmonic information in there. Spoiler alert, but this is going to be really close to the go-to tone for the drive stacking later. But I'm going to make you wait for that. Let's dial up my ambient sound. So we're going to do that same thing. We've got the bass rolled back. We've got our mids pushed a little bit. Let's take that bright almost out of the mix entirely. And now we have this like... That's not a particularly like exciting guitar tone. Like you wouldn't sell a pedal based on being able to take your guitar from this to this. But here's the thing. Something like the microcosm can sometimes sound a little bit too hi-fi. That's good and pretty and all, but like, let's give it a little bit of organic feel. Give it a little bit bigger reverb. You can even take that filter all the way open and not have it get way overly bright. And for context, take that Model FET out. Sometimes you want all that treble information. Sometimes you really want it to hit like that, but sometimes you want and you take that filter back a little bit and suddenly you're in the exact right spot for like even that bridge position is not going to spike out of your mix too badly. there's a mellowness there that is so just perfect for the right kind of ambient bed there. And again, we're still in our bridge position, which is like not the right position for almost any ambient recording. And for context, that's what that guitar would otherwise sound like, and listen to what it does to our ambience. Everything gets a little bit more hi-fi, a little bit more happy and present sounding. You lose that mellowness and that gravity. Okay, so that is why the normal channel is the like secret sauce of really great, warm, mellow ambient recording. Let's go ahead and talk through this EQ really quick. Let's spin up kind of like a go-to sound for me. So we're close to unity, we're just adding character. We've kind of got everything dialed the way that I tend to, which is like a slight bass reduction, a slight bit of mid boosting, and then the treble kind of gets dialed to taste. But let's listen to how these different controls kind of affect the overall feel of the pedal. See, this is what we're talking about. Listen to that. So we've got the bass completely taken out. If you max that treble out, you end up with a really bright. But if you roll that treble way back, you start to hear low end actually get reintroduced into your signal. It's kind of like more of like a low mid push. And then that mid-range is probably the most traditional of all of them, I would say. And it's also kind of the most extreme sounding. Like maxing out that treble doesn't feel like everything gets like crazy shrill. It gets bright, but it doesn't get terrible, but it does give you a little bit of a sense of a mid scoop, which is interesting. But that mid-range, if you scoop that, it gets real kind of mid-2000s smile amplifier shapes. Which is a strange feeling, especially if you start to kind of roll away from it a little bit. That's like that classic overdrive it. Just, I think we just built a metal zone with better components. Conversely, I actually really like the way that the mid-range on this is tuned. It feels wonderful. Let's now talk about why the Model FET is the secret sauce for stacking drives forever. This is, like I said, this is an amplifier. This is essentially, and you can use it to drive a speaker, not drive a speaker, but you can use this to drive a cab sim, analog or digital, or you can use it to drive a power amp. John did a series on Instagram that I recommend you go dig through the Instagram page of Electronic Audio Experiments, where he A/B'd the Model FET against a proper Sunn Model T and kind of had people blind taste, and I think it was fairly challenging. So let's dial up kind of our always on preamp sound that I would use for this. So here's our bass tone. And now I like treble right around noon. I like a tiny bit of mid push and a little bit of bass cut. We'll keep that normal channel nice and low, but bring that bright up. As close to unity as we can keep it. There we go. I could use that as my like starting place for almost anything. Okay, now let's blow that up. Like I said, I generally don't love stacking overdrives as a principle. Like I've not found that it gets me where I need to go 90% of the time, with the exception of like a clean boost into an overdrive just to give it a little bit more of what's already there. But the Model FET takes other drives like a champ. So let's take a look at that. Let's start things off with the DRV, which on its own can feel a little bit That's a great sound if you're going for that. It's got that rat sound. It does it better than anything else in my opinion, but it also, you know, it cuts a lot of low mid character that maybe you want all that attack and all that bite, but you don't want to sacrifice so much of your kind of like the weight of your guitar. Let's make this our bass tone. that DRV. There's so much more weight there. There's also a lot more drive because this thing just breaks up like crazy when you give it more. But you can also push that normal channel a little bit harder. For context, that's the FET by itself, and this is the wrap by itself, the DRV. But then you put them together with that normal channel doing a lot of the like weightiness of it all. And it stays weirdly articulate. It's so crazy. And the nice thing is, you can just blow it all the way up if you want. Now you're hitting a point where like these things are compressing into each other. You give that a decent, bigger reverb, and you have the most singing lead of all time. Had to. Conversely, let's go ahead and dial back up that more articulate. Where it feels like our current tone, just with more of it, a little bit more character, a little bit more complexity. And then you have something like the Limelight. I love the Limelight. It's like one of my favorite blues breaker style drives ever made. What if you want it to hit a lot harder, and harder than just adding that boost? You can kind of go. And again, it stays so... And you could take the gain way down on that and mainly push just the character and the volume to get a completely different vibe. So like this by itself is a great kind of like volume driven blues breaker sound. And then you can do this. It just gets like shreddy in a really cool way. And conversely, you've got that really great low drive setting on the Model FET, and you hit it with a boost. And it really does feel like a great way of getting more of this without necessarily having to increase that like internal clipping itself. You can just hit it with a boost a little bit harder. And that's going to keep that, especially something like the boost in the Limelight that does that slightly low shelved thing to add a little bit of clarity. You can get to that neck or that bridge position. And now you've got all that harmonic character from the Model FET, but just more of it without sacrificing kind of what you liked about that tone or getting into like a muddier place.